If I were to ask you, how in 12 months' time you would know that you had had a successful year, what would you say? Because most businesses and leaders would respond to that question with something like, well, we'll know if we had a successful year if our sales have increased, or our costs have decreased, or maybe our market share has expanded. And while all these measures, the tangible measures of business success, what I call a business's audible pulse, while they can be a useful indication of how you're tracking, can I also suggest they are notoriously unreliable, and they're often very, very misleading. Because you know what they are? They are lagging indicators. They are indicators of the decisions that you made 18 months and 3 years ago, how successful or effective or smart those decisions were. They talk about the past. They don't give a very good representation of how things are in the present, particularly that underlying health of your business and brand. I mean, consider the fact that brands like Kodak or Nortel or Borders or Saab Automotive, just a few years ago, those lagging indicator external measures, the audible pulses for most of those businesses looked fine. Everything, they look like the picture of health on the outside. And yet if you'd been able to scratch beneath the surface and ask the right questions, it would have been patently obvious that these businesses were far from healthy. I mean, even up until the late 1990s, Kodak was still a darling of Wall Street. Their stock was still very, very popular and very lucrative. And yet beneath that facade, Kodak was already well and truly down the path toward becoming obsolete. It's just that the numbers hadn't necessarily showed it yet. Now, when I'm working with clients, what I'll often encourage them to do is, to understand that the audible pulse measures have their place, but to pay more attention to the silent pulse of their organization, their brand, their business. Because you know what a silent pulse measures? It's those implicit things, the underlying fundamentals that actually show how healthy your business or brand is. It measures your vitality, your momentum, but most of all, your silent pulse is the measure of your relevance. Now, I want to give you 5 questions designed to gauge just how your silent pulse is right now. Now, the more of these 5 you answer yes to, the healthier your silent pulse is. So let's get started. Number 1, first question is this one here. Do your competitors tend to copy you? Or is it the other way around? Are you the one leading the marketplace, always the first to market with an idea or an innovation? Or are you the person reacting or responding to what everyone else is doing, playing a game of catch-up, trying to keep up with the Joneses in a corporate sense? Second question is, are your processes, procedures flexible, or are they rigid? Now, are they flexible? Are they open to negotiation? Because in many organizations, the reality is when you try and change things, that's when you realize how rigid or flexible those internal procedures or processes are. Because sometimes you'll run up against something where you try and change a certain way of doing things and you'll realize that it's a sacred cow that you're dealing with. And you'll know that because the phrase you'll hear is the phrase, you can't do that, because that's the way it's always been done. You can't change it. And of course, it's critical for any organization to stay vital and relevant, to maintain momentum, to keep up with the times, to be willing to sacrifice some of those sacred cows, to get rid of the things that are stuck in the past and are no longer appropriate or effective. The third question is, are you more excited about your future than your past? Now, for instance, when you go to social functions, would you tend to talk more about the milestones and the accomplishments of the past, or are you talking about the drawing board ideas, things coming down the track? What's on the drawing board? Now, fourth question, do you tend to spend more time on strategy or maintenance? Do you spend most of your time putting out fires, dealing with the urgent and the immediate, rather than the important and the strategic? And the fifth question is, and this is a pretty confronting one, in the last week, has one of your direct reports or one of your team members openly disagreed with you? Now, the reason this is so critical is that disagreement, dissenting views, people who see things from a different perspective and have a different viewpoint, those people must feel in an organization they have the permission and the opportunity to speak truth to power, even when that truth is uncomfortable or inconvenient. Now, Peter Drucker once said that no significant decision should be made in business until there has been at least one dissenting view. In other words, the best decisions are not made by consensus, but by discussion and often heated discussion. And there are plenty of examples of businesses where people weren't comfortable or able to express dissenting views, when if you traced it back, those dissenting views were the ideas, the perspectives that actually were the key to that business staying relevant as times changed. So how did you go? What was your silent pulse? How many of those questions were you able to answer a resounding and authentic and objective yes to? Now, because here's the thing, if you look after your silent pulse, if you make sure the underlying fundamentals of your business or brand are solid, you'll never have to worry about your audible pulse. The silent pulse, if it's healthy, the audible pulse, those lagging indicators, will naturally follow.